Today's story explores how humanity faced the impossible odds in Alien Encounter, Unveiling the Truth Beyond the Stars. In a galaxy teeming with unknown threats and powerful alien empires, humanity must uncover the truth behind an ancient and mysterious force, one that could either save or doom them. Let's dive in. The hum of the Odyssey's engines reverberated through the ship's metallic hull, steady and unwavering as it cut through the cold expanse of space. The crew had settled into a rhythm after weeks of deep space travel, routine as predictable as the stars themselves. Yet, Captain Raine felt a nagging unease, a flutter in her chest that refused to quiet. She couldn't quite place it. An instinct, perhaps, or maybe the quiet before a storm. Sitting in the command chair, she glanced over at Lieutenant Rivas, his hands deftly moving across the console. The young officer's wide eyes were fixated on the screen in front of him, his brow furrowed with a mix of fascination and disbelief. "Captain," he said, voice laced with urgency, "you're going to want to see this." Raine's pulse quickened as she stood, crossing the bridge to stand behind Rivas. His fingers paused over the controls, as though reluctant to reveal the data on the monitor. "What is it?" she asked, her voice calm but her mind racing. The screen flickered, the deep space scanners picking up a signal, one unlike anything they had encountered before. Not a distress beacon, not a distress signal. This was something different, alive almost, pulsing, alive. "It's a message, Captain," Rivas said, his voice a whisper now. "But it's not human. It's coming from the edge of the Orion Nebula." Raine's eyes narrowed. The Orion Nebula, one of the most dangerous regions of space, a graveyard for explorers, where stars were born and died in violent bursts of energy. Not the kind of place where they expected to find anything. Yet, here it was. "Is it a ship? Or what is it?" Rivas looked up, eyes filled with disbelief. "I don't know. It's too structured to be natural. It looks like an artifact." A pulse of adrenaline shot through Raine's body. She had never been one to shy away from danger, but this was unknown, uncharted territory. Her heart raced with anticipation. The uncertainty of it all was thrilling, but she couldn't ignore the creeping feeling that something was watching them, something intelligent. "Activate a wideband scan. Open a channel," she ordered, her voice sharp, commanding. She had to act. No time for hesitation. Her crew needed direction. Rivas nodded, his hands flying across the controls. The hum of the ship's communication systems grew louder, then faded into a crackle of static as the message began to filter through. The words were strange at first, unintelligible, a series of clicks and low-frequency hums. Then, slowly, it began to form. Humanity. The voice, deep and resonant, echoed through the bridge, sending chills down Raine's spine. "We have been watching." Raine's breath caught in her throat. There was no mistake. The voice was addressing them, and it knew who they were. "What do they want?" Lieutenant Rivas muttered, his eyes wide, filled with a mix of fear and awe. Captain Raine took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "I don't know yet, but we're going to find out." She turned to her crew, all eyes now on her. "Prepare for immediate course change. Set a trajectory for the Orion Nebula. All systems at full readiness." There was no turning back. This was a chance, an opportunity to understand the cosmos in a way humanity had never dreamed. But it was also a risk. The unknown could be dangerous. As the crew scrambled to execute her orders, Raine felt a weight settle over her shoulders. The Odyssey was on a path into the heart of something far bigger than themselves. She knew that with each passing moment, they were getting closer to uncovering a truth that could change everything. What kind of truth lay beyond the stars? And what would it mean for humanity's future? What would you do in Captain Raine's shoes? Would you venture into the unknown, despite the risks? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Enjoying this chapter? Don't forget to like and subscribe to HFY Genesis for more epic tales. The Odyssey glided silently through the black void, its engines humming a steady, reassuring rhythm. In the distance, the Orion Nebula loomed, a vast cloud of gas and dust swirling in the emptiness, like a cosmic storm. The ship's trajectory brought them closer to the heart of this celestial maelstrom, the place where the unknown awaited. Captain Raine stood at the command chair, her eyes fixed on the view screen, but her thoughts were elsewhere. What are we about to find? Her fingers drummed lightly against the armrest. The pulse of the message had sent waves of uncertainty through her. What had been intended as a scientific mission to explore deep space had suddenly taken a dangerous, thrilling turn. She could feel the eyes of the crew on her, waiting for her to lead them through the unknown. But inside, doubt gnawed at her. "Captain," Lieutenant Rivas called, his voice tense, cutting through her thoughts. "We're entering the outer rim of the nebula's magnetic field. It's stronger than expected. I'm detecting fluctuations in the comms. We're not going to have clear signals until we get closer." "Not ideal," Raine muttered, her mind already calculating their next steps. The uncertainty in Rivas's voice was palpable. Communication was vital now. They were too far from any support systems to risk losing contact. "We'll push forward," Raine decided firmly, her voice steady, despite the unease twisting in her chest. "All systems report. We're not turning back. Prepare the crew for possible anomalies." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what she was suggesting. The crew had already braced themselves for the possibility of encountering something alien. It was one thing to prepare for unknown phenomena. It was another entirely to knowingly fly into the jaws of the unknown. Minutes passed, but they felt like hours. As the Odyssey edged closer to the nebula's core, the starry void around them began to shift. The usual backdrop of distant stars disappeared, swallowed by the cloud of interstellar dust and radiation. The ship's shields flickered as they entered the magnetic distortion, but the hull held strong, groaning as if in protest. Raine felt the weight of the moment, the gravity of their decision pressing down. "We're about to cross into the unknown," she thought, her hands gripping the armrests tighter. Her thoughts turned to her crew, to the risks they were about to take, and to the messages still echoing in her mind. Humanity. We have been watching. As the Odyssey broke through the last layer of the nebula's swirling clouds, an eerie silence fell over the bridge. A single beacon of light appeared on the view screen. At first, it was just a flicker, but then it intensified, pulsing rhythmically in time with the strange message they had received earlier. "It's a structure," Rivas said, his voice full of awe. "Not a ship, not an asteroid, a structure. And it's alive." Captain Raine's breath caught in her throat. This was it. The thing they had been searching for. No, the thing that had found them. It was waiting. For what? Suddenly, a soft chime echoed through the bridge. "Message incoming," the comms officer called out. Raine leaned forward. "Put it through." The voice returned. This time, there was no static, no interference. The tone was deeper, clearer. "Humanity, your arrival was foretold. The time has come." Her skin tingled with a cold, prickling sensation. The language was familiar, human, but the meaning was not. "What does that mean?" Lieutenant Rivas asked, almost whispering. "I don't know," Raine replied, her voice tight. "But we're about to find out." The Odyssey continued its journey toward the structure, its engines barely a whisper against the silence of the nebula. Every member of the crew stood at their posts, tense, waiting for what would come next. Raine's mind raced. What did they want with humanity? What did they know about them that no one else did? She looked to her crew, her heart pounding. If we make it through this, humanity could be on the brink of its greatest discovery, or its greatest danger. What would you do in Captain Raine's position? Would you continue to move forward into the unknown, Or would you pull back? The fate of humanity is hanging in the balance. Enjoying this chapter? Don't forget to like and subscribe to HFY Genesis for more epic tales. The structure before them pulsed with a rhythm that seemed to echo through the very bones of the Odyssey. It was alive. Not just alive in the sense of technology, but in a way that defied all understanding, pulsing, breathing, responding to their every move. The bridge crew stood in tense silence, watching as the strange geometric form slowly became clearer against the backdrop of the swirling nebula. Raine could feel the eyes of every crew member on her, but she didn't dare look away. What is this thing? "Captain," Rivas said, his voice trembling. "It's like nothing we've ever encountered. The signals, it's as if it's aware of us." "Keep scanning," Raine ordered, her voice unwavering despite the storm of thoughts racing in her mind. There was no turning back. They had come too far. "We can't go back now." A new signal cut through the bridge's comms. It wasn't a voice this time. It was a burst of patterns, strange geometrical shapes that flickered on the screen, each one forming and reforming in rapid succession. Raine watched closely. Her training kicked in, her eyes narrowing as she focused on the chaotic dance of symbols. There was a pattern there. A test. The message was clear. "You must prove yourselves." Raine leaned forward. "Rivas, decode that." He looked up, his brow furrowed. It's some sort of challenge, Captain. A series of tests. They're not asking questions. They're demanding answers. By action." "What does that mean?" Her thoughts whirled. Every piece of information she had about alien life forms, first contact protocols, everything she'd trained for, none of it prepared her for this. It was like trying to solve a puzzle in the dark, and the stakes were higher than she'd ever imagined. "What kind of test?" Rivas pressed, his hands flying over the controls. "We don't know yet," Raine said, her voice steely. "But we'll have to find out. Prepare the crew." The sudden hum of the ship's systems fluctuated again, this time accompanied by a violent shudder that rattled the entire Odyssey. For a moment, it felt as if the ship was being pulled into the structure itself. The lights flickered and the floor trembled. A high-pitched sound echoed from deep within the walls of the nebula's heart, as though the structure was speaking, or testing them. "Brace for impact," Raine barked, gripping the armrests as the ship lurched forward. Everything seemed to slow down. Raine's mind raced. "This is it. The test is beginning." The ship lurched violently again. Crew members stumbled, holding onto their stations for balance. Alarms screamed throughout the bridge as Rivas's fingers flew over the controls, his face pale. "We're losing power. Shields are collapsing," Rivas shouted, panic creeping into his voice. "Recalibrate the shields. Bring the engines to full power," Raine commanded. Her heart pounded, but she kept her voice steady, fighting the panic that threatened to rise. "We can't afford to fail this test." Outside the view screen, the structure loomed closer, the pulsing light growing ever brighter, almost as if the ship were being drawn into its gravitational pull. It was a test, a challenge, something far beyond anything humanity had ever known. But Raine knew one thing with terrifying clarity. It wasn't just about the Odyssey anymore. This test was about humanity's place in the universe, their survival. "What if we don't make it through?" Rivas asked, his voice soft but raw. "What if the test is too much?" Raine locked eyes with him. His fear mirrored her own, but she couldn't show it. She couldn't afford to doubt now. "We'll make it through," she said firmly. "We don't have a choice." The ship bucked again, throwing her into the console. The lights flickered out completely. Silence. Then, suddenly, a voice. A deep, resonant tone, speaking in the same unknown language. Then it stopped. The ship was still. And then, an electric surge filled the bridge. The lights came back on, and the screen flared to life, showing a new pattern. A riddle of stars and coordinates, glowing brightly against the pitch-black backdrop. You did not fail, the voice rumbled, but your trial has only just begun. Raine's heart raced. What did that mean? She glanced around at her crew. Every one of them was standing still, uncertain. Fear, confusion, but also something else. Hope. Everyone, Raine began, her voice carrying an edge of authority that hadn't been there moments before. We've passed the first part of the test, but we need to be ready. The next challenge will be harder. Whatever this is, it's just the beginning. What do you think lies ahead for Raine and her crew? How will they survive the unknown trials awaiting them? The bridge was still. The crew remained tense, their eyes fixed on the strange coordinates that had materialized on the screen, flickering in and out as though they were too far from the ship's grasp. The nebula outside was a swirling ocean of cosmic dust, the colors of it rippling like a living thing. Raine stood at the helm, the hum of the ship's engines the only sound filling the otherwise silent room. Her mind raced. Where are we going? What does this all mean? Captain. Rivas's voice broke the silence, soft but urgent. I'm detecting a gravitational anomaly. It's pulling us toward that cluster of stars. Raine's eyes narrowed as she studied the projection. Can we avoid it? No, Rivas answered with a grim look. We've already crossed the event horizon. We're in its pull now. We have to follow it. The implication was clear. There was no turning back. The test had begun in earnest, and the Odyssey was a mere pawn in whatever larger game was unfolding. Her hand gripped the armrest tightly. This is it. Into the unknown. I know, she said, her voice steady despite the mounting anxiety in her chest. Prepare for course correction, but keep the shields at maximum. No matter what happens next, we stay in control. Yes, Captain, Rivas replied, his fingers already working at the console. Raine's thoughts lingered on her crew. They had signed up for a mission of discovery, for the promise of greatness. But none of them had anticipated something like this. There was a vulnerability to the unknown, something terrifying, and yet they had no choice now but to face it. As the ship moved deeper into the star cluster, the stars themselves seemed to distort around them. They weren't like the usual celestial bodies. These stars flickered in a rhythm that almost seemed like a pattern. But it was far too complex to decipher, too deliberate, too alien. A soft vibration hummed through the Odyssey, and Raine felt it deep within her chest. Rivas, Raine called out, tension rising in her voice. What's happening? Why is the ship vibrating like this? It's not the ship, Captain, Rivas replied, his voice trembling. It's the space around us, the fabric of it. We're being pulled in two directions at once. Whatever this is, it's manipulating gravity itself. We're trapped in its field. Raine's mind whirled. Her thoughts were a storm of uncertainty. But one thing remained clear. They were moving deeper into something alien, something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. Then, an image appeared on the main view screen, flickering in and out like a broken signal. A figure. Tall, cloaked in shadow. Its form was humanoid but twisted, its edges warping as though it didn't belong in this reality. Raine stepped closer to the screen, her breath catching in her throat. What is that? She whispered, barely able to form the words. It's them, Rivas said, his face pale. The architects of the test. The figure seemed to stare back at them, its eyes glowing with an ethereal light. And then, a voice. A deep, resonating tone boomed through the ship's comms. You have come far, but you have not yet proven your worth. You stand at the edge of the abyss. You must show your resolve or fall into the darkness. The words reverberated through Raine's chest, the sheer weight of them threatening to crush her resolve. The entire crew was silent, staring at the figure, waiting for the next move, for the next trial to begin. Raine swallowed, her throat dry. What does it want from us? The voice echoed again, its tone colder now. Prove your unity. Prove your worth. Prove that you belong among the stars. Raine knew this was no longer just a test of survival. This was a test of spirit. The nebula, the strange figure, the gravitational distortions, this was all leading them toward something that was beyond comprehension. Beyond the known universe. And it had no intention of letting them go unless they proved they were worthy. The crew held their breath, waiting. The tension was palpable. Would they fail this test? Would they fall into the abyss? Raine felt the weight of every decision pressing down on her. What if we fail? What if we're not strong enough? The doubts crept in, but she pushed them aside. She couldn't afford to falter now, not when so much was on the line. You heard the voice, Raine said, turning to face her crew, her voice firm, unyielding. We are going to prove that we belong among the stars. We will face whatever this test throws at us. Together, our unity is our strength. What would you do if faced with an overwhelming trial like this? Would you take the risk to prove your worth, no matter the consequences? The ship shuddered as the unknown entity's voice echoed once more through the Odyssey's hull, reverberating in the bones of every crew member. Its tone was no longer cold or calculating. It was ancient, almost sorrowful, as though carrying the weight of eons. You have proven your strength, your unity, but now you must face the truth that has been hidden from you, from all of humanity. The test was never yours to pass. It was always theirs. Raine's breath caught. The voice, the presence. It wasn't speaking to them. It was speaking through them. The revelation hit her like a hammer blow. The burden she had carried for so long, the weight of being a leader, of holding the fate of her crew and her ship in her hands, was nothing compared to the weight of the truth that was beginning to unfold. What truth? She whispered, her voice barely audible. The figure on the view screen flickered, its features shifting between shapes, as though it were struggling to maintain a form that could be comprehended by human eyes. The shadows around it danced, bending and swirling like a black hole's event horizon. The stars outside the ship twisted, forming lines that cut through space itself. You are not the first to arrive. You are not the first to face the test. The truth you seek lies in the heart of the star cluster, where your ancestors failed and where others have tried and failed. Raine's heart pounded in her chest. Her mind raced. Ancestors, failures. Explain, Raine demanded, her voice sharper now. The revelation was unraveling her, but she refused to succumb to fear. She had to understand. They had to understand. The voice responded, though this time there was an unsettling calm. Before the first starships left Earth, there were whispers, tales of a celestial force, an ancient intelligence that once walked the stars. They came from the stars, and they left behind a trail, fragments of knowledge, pieces of their minds, hidden in the heart of the galaxy. Your ancestors, those who took the first steps into the universe, discovered this force, and they too were tested. But they failed, and the knowledge they sought was lost, fragmented, sealed in time. The realization hit Raine like a torrent. Her heart ached with the weight of it. This wasn't just about survival. It was about something far larger, something that spanned the stars themselves. Her ancestors had sought the same knowledge, the same power, and had failed. And now, it is your turn, the voice continued. The test is not for you alone. It is for all of humanity. You must face the legacy of your forebearers. Their failure is your burden, and their knowledge is your salvation, or your destruction. Raine could feel the blood drain from her face as she stood frozen, the enormity of the situation crashing over her. She wasn't just leading a crew through the stars, she was carrying the hopes of all humanity's future on her shoulders. The crew behind her shifted, some exchanging worried glances, others standing rigid, as if anticipating some form of divine judgment. They too were feeling the gravity of the situation. Riva spoke first, his voice low but filled with an urgency that matched Raine's inner turmoil. "Captain, what do we do now?" His eyes were wide, his hands shaking slightly as he reached for the console. "Is this the end of the mission? Is it even possible to pass this test?" Raine turned to him, her voice steadier now, though it trembled on the edges. "It's not about passing. It's about understanding. We've come too far to turn back now." She paused, taking in the faces of her crew. "We are humanity's second chance. We will face the truth, and we will decide what happens next." Her words felt like an anchor, grounding them in the chaos of the unknown. But even as she spoke them, doubt gnawed at her. Can we really succeed where others have failed? The voice from the figure on the screen responded, its tone shifting again. This time, it was less detached and more, almost sympathetic. "I will show you the way, but be warned. What you will discover will challenge everything you know. The truth you seek will either bind you together or tear you apart." The figure's form warped once more, and then the star cluster outside the ship pulsed, brighter and more intense than ever before. The nebula's swirling colors turned into sharp lines, forming a shape, an ancient structure so vast that it consumed the entire star cluster. It was a labyrinth of technology and organic matter, intertwined in ways that were beyond comprehension. An enormous, floating temple, pulsing with a light that seemed to transcend reality. Raine felt the weight of its presence, pulling at her very soul. "That's where it all begins," she thought. "That is where we either ascend or fall." "We have to go there," Raine said, her voice full of resolve. "It's our only option." But Rivas's voice was filled with doubt. "What if we fail? What if this truth is too much for us? What if—" Raine turned sharply, her eyes meeting his with a quiet but powerful intensity. "If we fail together. But we will not let fear define us. We go as one, as humanity's future. Would you be able to face the truth, no matter how dangerous or unsettling it may be? Would you follow your ancestors' path, even knowing that their failure hangs over you?" Enjoying this chapter? Don't forget to like and subscribe to HFY Genesis for more epic tales. The Odyssey drifted closer to the heart of the star cluster, its engines humming with an almost unnatural stillness. The crew moved like shadows, each member gripped by an anxiety that seemed to settle over them like a fog. The strange alien presence that had guided them, showing them the way to the truth, had also made it clear. This was no mere journey of exploration. This was a confrontation. Raine stood at the helm, staring at the massive, ancient structure now filling the viewports of the ship. It loomed like a dark god, its silhouette cutting into the fabric of the cosmos. A labyrinth of interwoven metal and glowing energy, it pulsed with a rhythmic intensity, as though breathing, living. For days, Raine and her crew had struggled with the revelation, the burden of their ancestors' failure weighing heavily on their minds. They weren't just exploring space. They were about to uncover the reason why humanity had failed in the past. Why they hadn't succeeded in unlocking the secrets of the stars. Now, the time had come. "Captain," Rivas's voice cut through the thick tension. "I don't know if we're ready for this. If this is what broke them, what broke humanity, how do we know we can handle it?" Raine turned to face him, her eyes hard but conflicted. She could see the doubt in his expression, could feel the anxiety gnawing at her own resolve. The truth was, she wasn't sure they were ready either. What if they weren't? What if the knowledge, the power hidden within this place, was too much for anyone to bear? But she knew one thing for certain. They had to try. "We'll be ready when we face it," Raine said, her voice a quiet yet firm determination. She paused for a moment, looking out at the towering structure ahead. "We're humanity's last chance. We can't back down now." As the Odyssey drew closer to the enormous temple, an eerie silence settled over the ship. No one spoke. The crew remained motionless, each lost in their own thoughts, trying to prepare themselves for the impossible. Then, without warning, the ship shuddered violently. Alarms blared, and the lights flickered. A deep, resonating hum vibrated through the hull. It was a sound so primal, so ancient, that it felt as if the ship itself were being absorbed by the very structure it was heading toward. Raine's breath caught in her throat as she braced herself, gripping the arm of the captain's chair. "Report!" she shouted. Rivas scrambled to his console, his face pale. "Something's happening. It's not just the ship. The entire star cluster is—" He was cut off by another violent jolt, this one sending the crew tumbling. The Odyssey lurched forward, its trajectory spinning out of control. "Steady the ship!" Raine barked, her voice cutting through the chaos. But it was too late. The Odyssey crashed through a rip in space-time, a blinding flash of energy enveloping the ship, and for a moment, Raine felt her mind fracture. She saw flashes of the past, visions of the ancient civilizations that had tried and failed, glimpses of a terrible, unseen force lurking just beyond the edge of understanding. Then, the vision was gone, and the ship was falling. Impact. The ship slammed into the surface of the structure, grinding against metal, sparks flying from the broken hull. The sounds of the crash reverberated through the crew like a funeral bell. Raine's vision swam, her head spinning, but she quickly fought to maintain control. She could hear the low groans of the ship, the engines sputtering as the hull cracked open in places. Her hands clenched around the controls, and her heart raced. She couldn't afford to panic. Not now. "Status," she demanded. "We're alive," Rivas said, his voice shaky. "But we've taken heavy damage. Structural integrity is failing. The main engines are offline. We've crash-landed." Raine glanced out the viewport and saw nothing but the jagged, metallic landscape of the alien structure. It was nothing like she had imagined. The surface was smooth like black glass, but it seemed to pulse with energy. It was as though the ship wasn't just on the surface. It was inside something, an enormous cavern of light and shadow. "This is it," Raine whispered, her eyes wide with realization. "This is where we face the truth." Suddenly, the voice of the alien entity echoed once again through the ship, reverberating in every corner. "You have come. You have crossed the threshold. Now face what you truly seek. The truth you hunger for will be revealed. But be warned, this is no place for the weak. If you falter, you will never leave." Raine swallowed hard, her gaze meeting Rivas's. What if we fail? What if we are truly not strong enough? A deep, primal fear twisted in her gut, but she forced herself to stand tall. "We didn't come this far to turn back now. We fight through this. We find what we came for, together." The crew stood silent, their faces pale but resolute. There was no going back. Whatever lay ahead, they had to face it. They would face the unknown, not as individuals, but as a united force, bound by a singular mission: survival. The door to the bridge slid open with a mechanical hiss, and the crew began to gather. Each of them knew that the choices they made from this point on would shape their destinies. But Raine knew one thing for sure. This was their moment. The moment where humanity would either rise or fall. Would you stand strong in the face of such overwhelming odds? Could you hold on to your humanity even as the unknown tested your limits? The darkened sky above the ancient alien structure was split by flashes of bright, jagged lightning. The storm seemed to pulse with energy, as if the very atmosphere were alive, responding to the tension that had built up over the last few days. Raine stood before the massive, shimmering gates that had opened to reveal the heart of the structure, an ancient chamber filled with towering pillars of glowing energy. For a long moment, there was only silence. The crew, exhausted and battered from their crash, stood at the entrance of this alien citadel, their faces painted with a mix of awe and fear. Each step they took echoed through the hall, the floor smooth beneath their feet, but unnervingly cold. As they advanced deeper into the chamber, Raine felt the weight of history pressing on her shoulders. The truth they sought was just beyond reach, but so were the dangers. "We're walking into the unknown," Rivas said quietly, his voice tinged with a blend of wonder and dread. Raine didn't answer immediately. She was too lost in the enormity of the moment. It wasn't just the scale of the place that overwhelmed her. It was the realization that the future of humanity rested in their hands. There was no going back now, no retreat. As they ventured further, the atmosphere seemed to shift. The walls, lined with glyphs and strange symbols, began to glow brighter. The low hum of the structure intensified, resonating within Raine's chest. It felt like the building itself was awakening, reacting to their presence. Each new symbol they passed seemed to pull at their minds, offering fleeting visions of a forgotten past, visions of great civilizations rising, flourishing, and falling. The truth was coming, but it was not a simple truth. They entered a vast, circular chamber at the center of the structure. The walls were lined with mirrors, thick, dark panels that seemed to pulse with an energy not entirely of this world. In the center of the room, floating above a pedestal, was a sphere, a perfect, glowing orb that shimmered with colors beyond human comprehension. Raine's heart skipped a beat. She could feel the power of the sphere, its allure. This was it, the source of everything. "This is what we came for," she said, her voice hushed, her eyes locked onto the sphere. "But we have no idea what it is, do we?" "Not really," Rivas muttered, stepping cautiously toward the orb. "But I don't think we have a choice now." The others hesitated, each of them feeling the magnetic pull of the sphere in different ways. Some were terrified, some were mesmerized, but all were compelled. As Raine moved toward the pedestal, her mind racing, a sudden thought hit her. What if this was the point of no return? What if taking this step meant that they were bound by forces beyond their understanding? Forces that had been at play long before humanity had even begun to rise. Suddenly, the orb reacted. A crackling energy shot out from it, twisting and spiraling, bathing the chamber in blinding light. The mirrors on the walls flared to life, displaying visions of humanity's greatest achievements. Then, in the blink of an eye, turning to show its darkest moments. The horrors of war, disease, and greed flashed by, leaving Raine breathless. Then, without warning, the sphere spoke. "You seek to unlock what was lost, what was sealed. But know this, those who seek the truth may not return unscathed. The knowledge you seek will shape you, and those who follow." Raine's heart stopped. She was no longer sure if it was fear or something deeper, something more primal, that surged through her at the orb's words. The realization struck her like a thunderclap. This was a test of their strength, of their unity, of their willingness to face the truth, even if it meant sacrificing everything they had ever known. "What does it mean?" Rivas whispered, his voice filled with uncertainty. The orb pulsed, and the room seemed to grow even more silent, more oppressive. "You are the last of humanity, the last to carry the flame of an ancient legacy. You are the inheritors of what was lost. The questions you carry will guide you to the answers, but some answers are not meant for all." Raine's eyes locked with Rivas's. She knew what it meant. It was a burden, a responsibility, and no matter what came next, they had to face it together. "Rivas," she said, her voice steady despite the weight of it all. "We've come this far. We can't turn back now. Whatever happens, we face it, together." A single tear glistened in Rivas's eye as he nodded, swallowing hard. "Together." The orb continued to hum, its light growing brighter. The truth, at long last, was within their grasp. But Raine could feel it, the tug of something more, something dark. The history of their world, of their ancestors, had always been marred by mistakes. What if they made the same mistakes again? Would they be the saviors of humanity? Or would they be the ones to doom it once more? Raine stepped forward, her resolve strengthening. The moment of reckoning had come. As her fingers brushed the surface of the orb, the world around them shifted. The chamber trembled. The walls cracked. Time and space seemed to bend, and a voice, louder, more urgent, reached their ears. You have made your choice. The dawn of a new era begins now. But remember this, the truth will set you free, but it may also tear you apart. The orb flashed with a brilliant white-hot light, enveloping them completely. The ship had crash-landed. The crew had struggled through adversity. And now, they had learned the truth. The future of humanity, teetering on the edge of discovery and destruction, had shifted in that moment. Would they rise to the challenge? Or would the very knowledge that they sought destroy everything they had fought for? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It's the most important way to stay connected for more amazing sci-fi stories here at HFY Genesis.